Hello, and welcome to this continuing series of videos on the frequently asked questions section of our Humble Seekers video. Question 6 asks, how can I know which person to listen to in spiritual matters? Some claim authority by having or pretending to have contact with higher spiritual forces. How can I know? One should evaluate and choose such an advisor very carefully, perhaps just as carefully as one would choose a spouse, a career, a university, or a physician. As you've noted, not all who profess to have something worthwhile to offer have, in fact, something worthwhile to offer. One should feel comfortable with concepts and ideas that one receives from such a person, as well as with the person themselves. It should strike a resonant chord, so to speak, within us. If not, we would be wiser perhaps to look elsewhere. When the time is right, that which is needed will come to you. There are those who pretend contact, as you have stated. There are also some who do not have to pretend their contact with higher forces. Such contact, however, as real as it is, does not give them authority over anyone. Excuse me. We are all agents of free will, and as such we are expected to exercise our will to break away from those who are, or who seem to be, insincere, or perhaps manipulative. I am also wary of those who ask payment of large sums for their teachings. Ask yourself what Jesus charged for his teachings. It was never money. If you think about what it meant to follow him, however, the price was still so high that many were unwilling to pay it. Now, don't take this as a blanket condemnation of persons whom you may find to be willing or needful to accept something for what they offer, or as a blanket condemnation of all organizations who may have something worthwhile to offer. Some of these organizations, such as the Rosicrucian Order Amorc and others, may offer a very great deal, and not all of what they offer, including books or other printed materials, etc., comes to them without cost, and yet they ask comparatively little in return. These are very different, however, from those who demand exorbitant fees, but who may offer little. One must evaluate carefully and choose selectively in these matters. The goal of such an advisor or organization should be to help you become the best person that you can be and to achieve the greatest spiritual growth of which you are capable. The surest way for them to accomplish that goal is to help you learn to personally and directly communicate successfully and dependably with your own higher self. And that is one of the purposes, although not necessarily openly and directly stated as such, of the long-term studies offered by the Rosicrucian Order Amorc and other such reputable organizations. If any individual person with whom you are dealing regarding such matters is unwilling to set that as a goal, you may want to consider looking elsewhere. As I have repeated in my essays many times, and in these videos many times, this is not a task to be accomplished overnight. If you find that you're not comfortable with those individuals or organizations with which you've come into contact, then until you do find a level of comfort with someone, feel free to use the information in these videos for your personal study. I know that they may not seem to be as desirable as working with another person. Nevertheless, there is enough information in these videos to allow one to begin to walk that special path. And if you persevere, and it may be for a considerable number of years, there will be many who will be helped to that goal just from the information that is here in these videos, especially when it is used in conjunction with prayer, meditation, and diligent reading of the books from our book list and the other sources mentioned in that video. If you study it all over a period of time as instructed, and remember that every piece of information, no matter how casually it appears to have been mentioned, is here for a purpose, then it will not be in vain. if your heart is sincere. I believe that if you have need for personal study with another individual, it will come in its own good time. Remember that old axiom, when the student is ready, the master will appear. Just be certain that the master that appears doesn't have both hands out for money. Remember also that there is a spark of God that exists within each of us. As I have taught in these videos, we can grow spiritually, and as we grow, we can become attuned to and learn to communicate with our higher self, which some call the master within. Should there be a need to do so, there may even be a few that will eventually communicate with higher level guides, and there are numerous levels than the higher self, higher level than the higher self. Finally, if the need is there for a very few more, there will be the very special blessing and gift of being able to communicate with God the Father, God the Holy Spirit, and God the Son. I have no doubt that He is not apart from us, but that we are inextricably a part of God, just as God is a part of us, through that previously mentioned spark of God that lives within each of us. Excuse me. Question number 7 asks, I would like to be able to travel in my astral body around everyday things, and I have not been able to do this. What should I do to help this problem? And I'll respond in this way. Given what's been told to me, your desire to travel in the astral body has not been denied by some quirk or for some arbitrary reason. There's a purpose behind it. Ask yourself why you want to do it. If there is some real need for you to be able to do this, then I believe it will come at that time. Trust those who make such determinations, probably your higher self, to know what is in your best interests, and be willing to accept that decision. If you feel that you want to, ask your higher self to allow you to travel in that way, should you ever have the need to do so in order to serve the higher self or the higher cosmic forces, the positive higher cosmic forces. In that way, you let the higher self know that it's okay with you if it doesn't happen now. You also let the higher self know that you're willing to do it later if, through some need, it serves the higher self or the other positive higher forces. And you reinforce within yourself the idea that what the higher self wants is more important to you than what you feel that you want. Excuse me. Consider that you are exceedingly blessed with whatever things you have been allowed to do, and try to see it more from that point of view. These capabilities are not some lucky, quirky thing. They are an exceedingly great blessing, as I'm sure you know. They should always be treated as such. Question number 8 asks, what is the difference between paranormal and metaphysical phenomena? Let me respond by saying, in my observations over the years, the words paranormal, metaphysical, psychic, mystical, and spiritual are often used by different people to describe areas of interest or study which include knowledge, beliefs, or phenomena that may involve the same or similar concepts. The differences found between them more often seem to be in the terms that are used, perhaps as an indication of the level of understanding held by the person using those terms. The questions that are either answered or left unanswered are another aspect of it that tell you more about it, and the conclusions that are reached tell you a little more about it. Each of those words could be considered as another successive rung upward on the ladder that leads to understanding. Being at one rung or another is not necessarily a particular detriment or advantage. All the rungs are needed because there are so many of us that are at different levels of understanding due to the degree of previous preparation from previous incarnations that we have received. Do you suspect, as I do, that we are each in our level of understanding right where we need to be for any particular given time? I believe that that is the case. Excuse me. Question 9 asks, can you give me more information about the experiments that were done on plant consciousness that were covered in a previous video? I will say that I have long ago forgotten the details of the experiments that were mentioned relating to where they were done, who did them, or even when they were done. But the results of the experiments I found interesting, that so much so that I remember them to this day, and I read about them a very great many years ago. A number of plants were placed near each other in a room. They were wired to electronically measure and record, I seem to remember, any measurable impulses that they might give off. A person walked into the room with some sort of torch, perhaps propane or something similar, and turned the flame on one or more of the plants. That person then left the room. I don't recall if any measurements were recorded at the time of the burning of those plants, but later a number of persons walked through the area where the plants were kept without any unusual activity being measured. The person who had earlier burned some of the plants then walked through the room, and the measuring and recording devices registered a very noticeable reaction that was not present when any of the other persons had entered the area. The conclusions drawn by the researchers seemed reasonable to me at the time I read about the experiment. Question 10 asks, sometimes I feel like giving up on people. Not very many of them seem to be happy. Sometimes I feel very lonely, or I just feel overwhelmed that I don't know what to do. What do you think? I responded to that person by saying this. I'm very grateful that you took the time to email your thoughts to me. I believe very strongly that there is hope for us all in this life. I realize, though, that life can be difficult. We're all struggling in one way or another, but that isn't really as bad as it sounds, because one of the very important reasons that we choose to incarnate here on this planet is so that we can experience this life with its good and with its difficulties also. The reason for this is that we cannot learn the lessons that life here has to offer if we never experience any difficulty. Having and overcoming and mastering life's difficulties is how we learn the lessons that this life has to offer, the lessons that we reincarnate here to learn. If life was only smooth sailing, how could we ever learn to appreciate the calm that follows a storm? We, on a higher level, choose to come here just so we can learn these lessons of this life. And thankfully, if we miss a few this time around, God gives us another chance, and we can choose to come back here in a later incarnation for another opportunity to resolve the kind of problems that have given us difficulty previously. Your comments really offer all of us something to think about. Excuse me. I know, however, that the feelings of loneliness or inner emptiness that we all sometimes experience can be helped by the knowledge that although we may at times become lonely, we are never truly alone. Our unseen guides are always there. That which seems to be inner emptiness can begin to be filled when we open our minds and hearts more and more to truth and spiritual light and invite both in. Knowing that we are on a very special journey as a seeker on the path can also go a long way toward leaving behind those feelings of emptiness and loneliness. It is well known that these changes seldom happen over a short period of time. Nevertheless, positive changes do begin to take place in our lives, and with a good heart, a good book appropriate to our place on the path, and a prayer on bended knee with bowed head, we can make it even through the most difficult times. The something we can live for is the knowledge that we are accomplishing those tasks which we have come here to accomplish. Dealing with getting an education, a job, marriage, bringing up children, coping with later life, etc., are, from a certain point of view, all simply vehicles to help us accomplish the deeper reason why we are here, and that is learning those needed lessons that this life has to offer. It would mean a lot to me if you would watch the various videos that are in this Humble Seeker series of videos that look interesting to you. I believe that some of the information they provide could help your outlook by giving you a better understanding of how and why these things happen and how and why we benefit. There is also a poem called With Woman and With Man in the poetry section that I believe will help understand one of the important points that's being made about our lives here. Once you've taken the time to stop and realize why we come here in this life, you can better understand why it is always to our benefit to pray for greater strength and not for fewer problems. I thank you for watching. I encourage you also to watch the next video and those following it in order to get the full benefit of all the knowledge that they contain. Again, my sincere thanks.